the war between Israel and Hezbollah is going to resume, and that will force the Iranian regime to take an action.
Iran entered 2024 projecting strength, but it exited it under strain and spent 2025 absorbing blow after blow. Yet the regime didn't collapse. It's still standing and recalibrating. Today on Eye for Iran, we're taking stock of 2025 for the Islamic Republic, what changed, what didn't, and what all of this means as Iran heads into 2026. Joining me to break it down are Avi Melamed, a Middle East analyst and former Israeli intelligence official, Jay Solomon, author of The Iran Wars, and Dr. Shahram Kholdi, a historian specializing in Iran and regional geopolitics.
Direct confrontation between Israel and the Islamic Republic is in the horizon.
There's a lot of talk about the Iranian missile program, other elements of its nuclear program that are advancing, and talk from Israel that they might strike.
We'll also look at accountability. A group of victims of the Iranian government's crackdown during the 2022 Women Life Freedom Movement has filed the first ever criminal complaint against 40 named Iranian officials, alleging crimes against humanity, including targeted blinding and murder. The Iran Human Rights Documentation Center helped file the lawsuit and will be joined by its executive director, Shahin Milani.
Still, if you engage in killing of protesters or others, or torture, or these kinds of crimes, there are consequences for you.
And finally, we'll talk YouTube, how a new update is creating real pain for Iranian content creators while offering relief to some viewers, with fewer ads on a platform that remains officially banned but widely used inside Iran. We'll break down the social, economic, and political consequences with researcher and postdoctoral fellow Siavash Rokni.
If we don't allow content creators to have freedom, and it will be used in the benefits of the system to engineer the Iranian culture.
I'm Negar Moshehedi, and this is Eye for Iran. What was 2025 really like for the Islamic Republic? And what should we be watching for as Iran heads into 2026? Joining us to unpack all of this is Avi Melamed, a Middle East analyst and former Israeli intelligence official, Jay Solomon, the author of The Iran Wars and an investigative reporter with the Free Press, and Dr. Shahram Kholdi, a historian specializing in Iran and regional politics. Thank you so much, everybody, and welcome.
Hello there.
Good to be here.
Avi, let's begin with you. If you had to choose one word, and just one word only, to summarize what 2025 has been like for the Islamic Republic, what would it be, and tell us why?
The word would be crisis for the regime. And the major reason for that, there are different reasons, but I would say that, at least in my mind, the most significant one is that I think that we are witnessing now a very significant shift in Iran, in the sense that many Iranian people are no longer afraid of this regime. I think there is a growing understanding within many people in Iran, particularly the young generation, that we are at a transitional phase. And I think this is a very significant development.
And Jay, I wanted to ask you about that because there's been a lot of discussion, especially in Western media, about a kind of social transformation or social renaissance inside Iran. Factoring in what Avi said about the fear factor, can you talk to us more about that and how you would describe the mood inside the country right now?
I mean, it's tough because none of us are actually on the ground, and there's also often quite disinformation. But there have been a lot of stories about, the public just not being as kind of afraid of the regime anymore, women going, without their headscarves. And there's so many problems in that country, from lack of water to forest fires to inflation, that it's probably difficult for the regime to put all of these fires out at once. So, I think we are, as Avi was saying, we're moving into a cycle where the regime is clearly on the back foot. I mean, the word I'd use for the year is weakness, in the sense that since I would go back to 9/11, there were a series of actions that really strengthened Iran, from the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, the overthrow of the Taliban. The Iran nuclear deal gave a lot of money to the regime that they were pumping into their proxies overseas. And this last year, we really saw a reversal with, you know, the decapitations of the leaderships of Hezbollah, the Syrians, Hamas, and the strikes on Iran itself. So I think that combination has created an environment where people seem to be less afraid of the regime, even though they certainly in the weeks after the 12-day war, they really did seem to be cracking down, and there was a fear that there'd be a massive, you know, bloodbath. But it seems like they've kind of pulled back a little bit.
Wow. So 2025, a year of crisis, a year of weakness. It's really been a defining year for Iran. Shahram, from a historical perspective, where do you land on all of these issues and the June war between Iran and Israel? Some describe it as a decisive moment. Some argue that it really changed everything. Others say it changed very little and that the regime is still standing and recalibrating. So where do you stand on this?
Well, to be honest with you, it is very difficult to characterize the situation right now with respect to the Islamic Republic. However, I think rupture is a much better word that encapsulates everything that has been happening, culminating to the 12-day war. What we can see is basically a host of surges that basically came and intersected at that historical turning point. So if the Iranian people from 2018, 2019 started to become less and less afraid of the regime and its multifaceted devices of suppression and repression, people, in my opinion, kind of tapped into their collective memory of the past 46 years. I vividly remember this, and this is recorded in many social histories of the Islamic Republic, that during the Iran-Iraq War, every time that the Iraqis would launch one of their city wars or missile attacks on major urban centers, for a period just after that, you wouldn't see the Comité and the vice and virtue police attacking women. There would be some sort of relaxation of cracking down on hijab. During the time of Rafsanjani, when Iraq attacked Kuwait, the same thing happened. They relaxed going after women in major urban centers in big cities. And then they resumed it as soon as they realized that, oh, this is not a threat that would be endangering them existentially. The same thing happened again during the time of Ahmadinejad. At the beginning, they were relaxing, then they suppressed. So these ebbs and flows in repression have been once and for all thrust aside by Iranian people. And this really started in 2018, 2019 with those so-called economic protests, which were really not economic protests. They were used as a casus bellicus by people to express their dissatisfaction with the lack of proper governance in the country, not that, but corruption. And then it culminated to woman life freedom movement. And then the regime was taken by this, I would say, illusion that it was able to completely weather the storm of woman life freedom until October 7th attack by Hamas against Israel and Israeli people. And the regime tried to recover from that by supporting Hezbollah, by others. And there was a brief period, actually, of trying to culminate in the number of executions, which has continued to date.
Continues to rise, yes.
And this is very important to note, despite the fact that the regime is now, like the time of Ahmadinejad, like the time of the end of Iran-Iraq war, would try to revive the kind of secular nationalist views dating back all the way to the pre-Islamic era, to the time of Cyrus the Great. Whilst it is trying to do this kind of thing, it is within the walls of the prisons, trying to execute people en masse with the latest example of Aqil Keshavarz, who was executed on charges, in my opinion, trumped up charges of working for the Mossad or for the Israeli intelligence.
Yes, as they usually do, that's their go-to charge for people that they want some sort of excuse to get rid of them. So, Avi, for you, what was the biggest defining moment for Iran in 2025?
The war with Israel. The significance of the war in Israel is the fact that Iran lost one of its most, if not most significant asset in the context of Iran's regional hegemony vision, and that is the fact that Iran was building its strategy on a deterrence capacity, using its proxies, the axis of resistance, the Hezbollah, the Iraqi Shiite militias, the Houthis, and others, provided the Iranian regime seemingly an ultimate insurance policy. And when you look retrospectively for the last 40 years, indeed you see that the region came to term in the end of the day with the fact that the Iranian regime was able to expand its influence across the region. Syria, Lebanon, Gaza Strip, Yemen, Iraq are examples. And it was to a large extent based upon the concept of the deterrence. The deterrence was one of the most significant, what I call three-leg stool that the Iranian hegemonic vision is based upon. That leg was basically taken out in the war between Israel and Iran in June during 12 days. Remember, this is something that the region was looking at awe or shocked. The fact that Israeli Air Force basically took control over the Iranian sky. We have to remember that all those years, as part of building the deterrence capacity, the regime in Iran was demonstrating every other day its military capacities, the missiles, the parades, the navy, and so on and so on. And so the region within 12 days basically looked at that picture and realized that that regime is not immune, that that regime is not indefeatable. And that, I think, is the most significant, crucial moment in the context of the region, in my opinion.
And you mentioned that leg got cut off, that deterrence factor. So I would assume that they want to rebuild it. Now we're hearing talks of, something to look out for in 2026 is not Iran's nuclear capabilities or ambitions, but now the missile issue. What do you think about that, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of reports in recent days about Prime Minister Netanyahu and other Israeli officials meeting with Trump administration officials down in Florida, kind of raising the alarm of the Iranian missile program, its ballistic missile program, kind of as the next element of its ability to project power that needs to be decapitated. There've been talks of the Iranians developing hypersonic missiles and other types of equipment. So that is going to be something really on the front burner in the next, couple of months going into 2026. Does Israel again talk about, take strikes to degrade Iran's ability to strike externally? There's also been talks in the Israeli press of other types of nuclear advances that the Iranians were secretly making that also needs to be taken out. So that's going to be a really big issue. And it's interesting, too, when you look at where the U.S. debate is right now, because it's kind of weird. There doesn't seem to be that much pushback in the Republican Party about what the Trump administration is doing in Venezuela, but there's still just kind of like a certain wing of the MAGA movement that is kind of fixated on being anti-Israel, almost being an ally of Iran in some ways by pushing back against any military activity that could drag the U.S. in. So, like you said, there's a lot of talk about the Iranian missile program, other elements of its nuclear program that are advancing, and talk from Israel that they might strike, but also a lot of pushback from within Washington for the U.S. to either back it or join in. And I think that's going to be a major debate in 2026 and going into the next electoral cycle.
Dr. Kholdi, what are you watching out for then in 2026? Well, how do you see, based on what you're hearing for both Avi and Jay, how do you see the theme going forward as a continuation of this weakness and of this crisis mode that the Islamic Republic appears to be in?
Well, you see, one of the one of the major things that I learned when I was at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem in 2003 from Yaakov Bar Simon Tov, who actually came up with the idea of peace as justice in the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians, was that whatever the Israeli national security would be, minimizing risk would be at its core, because a country like Israel, even in a community of neighborly friends or friendly neighbors, cannot achieve ideal security. This is a fact because of the uniqueness of Israel. Every time the United States, under whatever administration, Reagan administration, Clinton administration, George W. Bush administration, has underestimated the capacities, I would say, diabolical capacities of the Islamic regime of Iran and its proxies, Israelis and Jews around the world have had to pay a very hefty price for it. I can go as far away as the bombing of the embassy and the cultural center in Argentina, and come back all the way to all rounds of war that Israel chose, even under Prime Minister Netanyahu, to deal with them in a defensive, aggressive manner, as opposed to aggressive, deterrent manner. And the defeat of that approach we saw solidly in 2006. In fact, the Islamic Republic showed how strong it is and how capable it is in exploiting when defensive deterrence is deployed against it. Because as Avi said, they have always been an ideological hegemon. And I would say that their national security has not been really deterrence in any sense, but it has been aggressive, revolutionary hegemony as the core policy, with the ultimate aim of the destruction of the state of Israel. Now, they can split hair and they can say that, oh, we mean the Zionist regime, we don't mean the people of Israel, so on and so forth. But going ahead, President Trump will be taught a very hard lesson by whoever who would succeed Prime Minister Netanyahu, if that would be the case, if he doesn't manage to strike a new coalition in the new year. Let's say that, hypothetically, let's say that his government would collapse, someone else would come. Even the most right-wing Israeli prime minister would be forced, would be compelled, because of the present posture of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that, as I said in the previous time, that because they think that they were not destroyed during the 12-day war, if something that can kill you doesn't destroy you, it makes you stronger. They are operating by that kind of doubling down kind of situation. And Israel, with its new, in my opinion, strategic alliances, we know that Arrow 3 is going to be soon completely installed across Germany. This is an important development. Israel is now rising to become an indispensable middle power, not just for the United States, but for Europe. And if the United States wavers and dilly-dallies in the defense of against...
And is that because they don't trust the United States right now, or they're on shaky grounds? Why do you think that is?
Israelis, I apologize, Avi. I'm just speaking based on what I have read of your colleagues and your predecessors. Israelis have never been able to afford to trust Americans. Otherwise, they would not have hired someone like Jonathan Pollard to spy on the Americans during some of the administrations that Israel would regard as one of the most reliable ones. And this is partly because the State Department traditionally was dominated by Arabists. And this is a fact in the United States. Perhaps this State Department is less, but it's still dominated by Arabists, but by Arabists of different kind. Arabists who think that they can placate the present Arab regimes, the conservative monarchies, in the Abraham Accord and create a new collective security in which Israel is a primary partner for all the Arab states. So if the United States does not wish to destroy the Islamic Republic, the other Arab states must resign themselves to rely on Israel if they want security against a regime that is not only an existential threat in the long-term, short-term, historical terms against Israel, but at its core ideological existence, believes that all these Arab regimes are puppets of Zionist imperialists. And if they don't realize that, if they think that, the threat of the Islamic Republic has been dealt with once and for all, and they are weakened, they are fooling themselves.
And, we saw that cooperation and that partnership during the 12-day war, that when these missiles were being fired at Israel, it was the Arab states that came in and helped prevent a lot of them from landing on Israeli territory. And that's highly significant. No matter what we see, on the stage, there's all these things happening behind the scenes. What do you think about that, what Dr. Kholdi just said, Avi? And what does that mean for the Islamic Republic going forward into 2026? Do you see them doubling down, or do you see them quietly kind of taking a pause or stalling until maybe the end of the Trump administration?
I pay a lot of respect to this regime. It's a very sophisticated regime, and they know how to maneuver. So we should always look at them as a very sophisticated one. It seems like that currently the most significant thing as of now, and I'm kind of like trying to reflect both the story of Israel and also the story of the regime in the current situation, we are in a very highly sensitive moment. There is a lot of concern that with all the story of Iran doubling down its ballistic missile projects, trying to reestablish the axis of resistance, particularly Hezbollah, with the outcomes of the recent elections in Iraq, that saw once again the powerful impact of the Iranian-backed Iraqi Shiite militias. All those things together, there is a growing concern that there will be some misinterpretation of intentions on both sides that could result in a very short period into a further escalation, maybe resuming of a direct Israeli-Iranian collision. This is something that we should be aware of. As for the Arab regime, as Dr. Kholdi says, in the end of the day, the Arab regimes, and particularly when we are talking about the Gulf monarchies and Saudi Arabia, they have been very explicitly saying all those years to the regime, they're saying, look, we are neighbors. We want to have a good relationship as neighbors, but stay out of our business. But as Dr. Kholdi mentioned, the regime has a different perspective on that. And so in the end of the day, when you look at the long-term strategic interest of those specific players, namely Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, reminding us all they have been directly and indirectly attacked by Iran and its proxies, the Houthis. So when you look at the long-term strategic interest, obviously, they surely understand and they know the significance of Israel in a structure that will be an enormously significant layer of their defense, strategic defense long-term capacities. And I think that this will be one of the most significant things to follow. In the end of the day, when we are entering 2026, taking into consideration the enormous domino effect post-October 7, namely the weakening of Hamas, the defeat of the Hezbollah, the downfall of Assad regime, and the crisis in Iran, we are looking at a very, I would say, sensitive times. where we could find ourselves sliding in a very short process to an escalation. And this is something that we have to be aware of. Here comes the most significant component, and this is Trump administration. And I do think that Dr. Kholdi is reflecting something that is out there, in the sense that there is some sort of like schizophrenic approach within the administration vis-a-vis the regime and the threat that it is presenting. All in all, I think that we are looking at a very pivotal year, 2026, in that regard.
Wow. And you guys mentioned the Arab factor here. And we talk a lot about Israel. You talked about more direct conflict. Would we see this with Arab states? I mean, we thought it would be unprecedented, and yet it happened with Israel. Could we see this with actual Arab neighbors as well? What do you think about that, Jay?
I mean, whether it's the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, all of them seem to be so fixated for differing reasons on their economies, over economic development, political stability. Even while, the Saudis and Emiratis probably were effusive in their joy about the strikes on Iran, I don't see them becoming directly involved militarily. The rhetoric has changed quite dramatically from 5 or 6 years ago, as far as, talks you'd hear from Riyadh about cutting off the head of the steak. You're not really hearing that right now. So I do not see much of a direct conflict between any of these Arab states and the Iranians. More sort of, in the case of the Saudis and the Emiratis, kind of quiet support, like you discussed, how some of them were helping with air defenses. Qatar has almost emerged as an ally of Iran in a lot of ways, both in its messaging and its diplomacy, clearly trying to shield Iran from conflict. So yeah, I do not see the Arabs getting directly involved in a military conflict with the Iranians in the coming year or coming years.
So, if we're seeing kind of this, like, as you mentioned, quiet support from the Arab states, potentially more conflict between Iran and Israel also aligning itself with European states in case they can't rely on the United States. What does this mean for the Islamic Republic going forward? Does this mean we could potentially see a warming of relationships between Iran and the United States, and they cut some sort of deal? Avi, you mentioned that they're sophisticated and they know what they're doing to stay, kind of in the long run, long-term game plan here. What do you guys see, a direct war then between Iran and Israel, or a warming of relations? Would that impact U.S. Israel relations? Like, I feel like there's so much that's going to happen in 2026 and so many factors. Given your area of expertise, each one of you, what do you predict? Shahram, we'll start with you, and then Avi, and then we'll end with you, Jay.
I think the likelihood of a direct confrontation between Israel and the Islamic Republic is in the horizon. I just don't see how the Islamic Republic can escape it unscathed. It is likely, you see, the Islamic Republic, when it is weak, it pretends that it is playing diplomatic chess, while in the background, it is playing poker. And it is like IRGC and the intelligence and everybody are doing everything. And then whenever it comes, all of a sudden, this facade of diplomacy shatters, and missiles and nuclear attempt at developing whatever nuclear arsenal comes out of it. But in the blind spot, we still have the Houthis. I cannot believe that the Arab monarchies are still going back to the thinking of the 1990s or 2000s, that containment works with the Islamic Republic. Every time any power, middle or otherwise, in the region or outside the region, has deluded itself that they can contain this revolutionary hegemonic regime, and they have brought down their guard, the Islamic Republic has pounced at them. It has happened in so many different theaters. So if I would have the privilege of giving advice to Arab monarchies in the Persian Gulf, I would say that if you're buying those F-35s, make sure that you train them as to how they are going to give the Islamic Republic the kind of deterrence against the Islamic Republic, the kind of deterrence that you seek to have. But remember, they will come back at you at all sorts of smaller projectiles that only the Israeli laser shield can protect you against, and not to have the repeat of attacks that happened against your refineries and oil petrochemical facilities and the like. And they will not directly come from the Islamic Republic. They may still come from the Houthis. And the Houthis will remain a dangerous thorn in the side of the Arab monarchies of the Persian Gulf that can actually become quite infested and can lead to all sorts of other problems. And I find it, I'm actually totally gobsmacked by seeing that we are going to keep seeing this repeats itself, like those episodes of Homer Simpson, that he keeps hitting this electrified fence and he gets electrocuted by it time and again, and he keeps hitting it, thinking that next time he is not going to be electrocuted by it. The Arab monarchies have shown the kind of savvy and wisdom to develop their countries, despite all the struggle and all the conflict and the strife thrust at them by the Islamic regime. In my opinion, they should not hesitate in joining Israel and create what I believe is a Damascus-Baghdad arc that has to be reinforced to prevent the Islamic Republic. And this arc, this security arc, has to be extended to Yemen to totally contain and hopefully destroy the Houthis. And this has to happen in 2026, 2027, because if it doesn't happen, the Islamic Republic will force their hands to do this kind of thing. And by that time, some of their investments might have been destroyed by the Islamic Republic and some of its proxies, whatever that happens. Look at Lebanon. They have not been able to have any progress in Lebanon as of yet. In my opinion, Lebanon will still be a bone of contention. Syria will be a bone of contention. Iraq is a bone of contention. And despite whatever my colleagues are saying, I would not have it past the Islamic Republic that this attack by Daesh and ISIS was orchestrated in collaboration between the Quds Force and some of the ISIS elements against American forces, because the Islamic Republic needs to get even, to get some sort of vindication against the against the United States. The Islamic Republic is that kind of extremely, extremely underhand regime that cannot be underestimated.
Avi, what about you? Your final concluding remarks here?
2026, a lot of tensions. I definitely would not exclude the possibility of reignition of the direct Israeli-Iranian war. There are three major reasons for that scenario. One, I mentioned before, is this is the interpretation or wrong interpretation of intentions, a scenario that it's definitely out there. There is another thing, and that is the story of Hezbollah in Lebanon. The disarmament of Hezbollah, which the Lebanese government, though, wants to do, that is not going to happen out of a goodwill. And the Lebanese army is not going to disarm Hezbollah. Israel is basically making very clear that it will not going to tolerate the presence of the Hezbollah in South Lebanon and beyond it in the terms of its long-term missile capacities. In other words, we are witnessing a scenario that the war between Israel and Hezbollah is going to resume, and that will force the Iranian regime to take an action, because this is the most significant last component, roughly speaking, left in this corridor that the Iranian regime was able to develop from Iran all the way to the Mediterranean. And then the last component, I would say, that also could contribute, quote unquote, to the scenario of reignition of Israeli-Iranian war is the deepening crisis in Iran. It may lead to a point that the Mullah regime will, out of a big crisis and need to somehow avoid the challenge, will initiate a move that will result in a fast deteriorating process to the reignition of a war with Israel. I think that these are all components that are out there. We should be very much aware of that.
And Jay, your final concluding thoughts on 2026?
Well, these are excellent points. I'd also add, I think the internal dynamics inside the U.S. are being closely watched by Iran and Israel as far as how another war might break out. If you're the Islamic Republic, you're looking at two trends that are very much in your favor. You've got sort of the far left, very anti-Israel, almost pro-Hamas faction of the Democratic Party gaining momentum. We see this in New York with the election of Zohran Mamdani as mayor. And then you have this isolationist, extremely anti-Israel element of the part of the Republicans. You'd see it most in Tucker Carlson, but people very close to JD Vance, who's could be the next president, when they're seeing this kind of anti-Israel, kind of almost pro-Iranian political discourse emerging from both the left and the right, I think the Iranians probably like how that could impact them in the region. I think because of this, you could see Netanyahu with Israelis saying, look, if we're going to try to further degrade the Iranian military capabilities, we got to do it now before the political support in Washington becomes even more precarious. And I think from the Iranian side, looking at that, they might be interested in escalation in some ways to bring even more pressure on the Israelis. So I think the domestic politics of the U.S. over in 2026 going into the next electoral cycle will have a big impact on what happens on the ground.
That's a really interesting perspective. And there's lots to watch out for in 2026. Yet again, another defining year potentially for the Islamic Republic of Iran and its survival of this Islamic Republic regime. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today, and all the best. Happy holidays, and wish you guys all the best for the new year.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Happy holidays.
Victims of the 2022 Women Life Freedom Movement have filed the first ever criminal complaint against 40 named Iranian officials for crimes against humanity. Joining me now is Shahin Milani, the executive director for the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center. Shahin, welcome and congratulations on helping launch this landmark lawsuit.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nagarjan. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Tell us, what is the main purpose behind this complaint?
Well, first and foremost is just seeking justice for the victims and Iranian people in general, the broader Iranian community. So this complaint at this stage is basically presenting documents to the Argentinian judiciary so they can make a decision as to whether issue an arrest warrant and decide to prosecute Iranian officials for human rights violations committed during the 2022 Women Life Freedom protest movement. Argentina is one of a handful of countries that recognizes universal jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
That means that its courts, its judiciary has the authority under Argentinian law to prosecute atrocity crimes, like war crimes or crimes against humanity or genocide in its courts. And regardless of whether the accused are actually in Argentina or not. So that made it possible for us to try to pursue that avenue for seeking justice for the victims.
And you mentioned that Argentina is privy to or party to universal jurisdiction. So too is Canada, Sweden, many other countries. So why Argentina? Are there Iranian officials paying a visit to that country in particular? Is there a particular reason why it's Argentina?
Well, as I said, they don't require that the accused be actually present on Argentinian soil. So that's a very major impediment in many other countries. For example, in Sweden, they require that like where Nuri was tried.
Having Nuri, yes.
Yes, he was actually on Sweden soil. So, and in Argentina, in the recent past, there's been several instances in which arrest warrants have been issued for leaders of several countries, like Maduro. An arrest warrant has been issued for him, also for Aung San Suu Kyi and other Burmese officials, and also for Daniel Ortega. So in Nicaragua. So in Argentina, I think is a good place to bring this complaint because of its laws and the fact that in recent past such efforts have been successful in terms of issuing arrest warrants. Not that anybody has been caught and actually tried there, but at least for these initial steps, Argentina seems to be a good venue.
Well, and there were 40 officials that you were able to identify. How did your team investigate and identify those who were allegedly involved?
Well, that list and officials have been named in the complaint. The complaint is confidential, so we cannot name them. But
Of course, yes.
it's been through research of our team, also by the FFMI, the fact-finding mission. Through its course of its mandate, has gathered a lot of evidence, and that includes names of Iranian officials that have engaged in atrocity crimes. So many of the names come from there.
Wow, it's a very overwhelming and difficult task. So it's really, hats off to you and your team for being able to do something like that. Tell us more about what makes this case so unprecedented, legally and historically speaking, when it comes to the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Well, first of all, it's the first complaint filed with respect to the woman life freedom movement in courts anywhere. So that's historic. And if actually, we don't know what's going to happen, of course, the decision on further steps lies with the Argentine judiciary. But, if we succeed and if the judicial process proceeds in a way that we would like, then we're at the place that internationally Iranian officials will be on notice that they're not safe, and if for some reason they have to leave Iran, they could be arrested. It's possible. And the thing to note is that the officials that have been named are not just high-level officials. Some of them are mid-level. So this is a notice to everybody in the Iranian system that you may not be a high-level official, but still, if you engage in killing of protesters or others, or torture, or these kinds of crimes, there are consequences for you.
So you can't hide behind this cloak of, well, I was ordered. They told me to do this. I'm just a mid-level, whatever.
Yes.
And it also, this lawsuit really, other than, of course, the main purpose, like you mentioned, justice, this really sends a message.
Yes. And also I would like to note that this is not a lawsuit for compensatory measures. It's not meant
it's a criminal. It's not civil.
Yes, it's a criminal complaint. Yes, because in the past there have been many efforts in the U.S. and other places that have sought damages. This is not like that. We're going for, it's a criminal complaint. And yes, so it is about accountability. And, with regimes like the Islamic Republic, there has been so little accountability because, Iran is isolated and these people are in Iran and often they don't leave Iran. But we don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's possible that in the future, some of these officials' circumstances change. They have to leave Iran. So they should know that they're not going to be immune from prosecution if they decide to leave Iran.
So tell us more about what's kind of like the best case possible scenario coming out of this lawsuit and something that you can achieve that's tangible.
Well, again, it depends on what the Argentinian judiciary decides to do. If they go ahead and actually in similar take the path that they've taken in the recent past with respect to
Yeah, based on precedent, what do you
yes,
think? Yeah.
yes, we can have an arrest warrant issued for them, and then but that's the stage that we're at with the cases I mentioned. Of course, Maduro is still in power; he hasn't been arrested. So Aung San Suu Kyi, I think is in house arrest, but by Myanmar officials, not for any international prosecution. And so, at this stage, if an arrest warrant is issued, that'd be a success. Then later on, whether actually a trial can be held, that's contingent on circumstances that at this point it's not possible for me to foresee.
Yeah, and especially if we see in the near future, I mean, with all the, the crisis that Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has faced in 2025, and more of it suspected for 2026. If this regime does fall, then you have all the mechanisms and everything in place to seek that accountability that you speak of.
Yes, exactly. How it will actually, pan out, I don't know, because uh, you know, things like that don't happen that often.
No, they don't.
So
But
unfortunately,
it could. But it
yes,
could.
but they could. So it's not that we can say, okay, this has happened so many times before. Now we know what's gonna happen. It depends on how and when the regime collapses, and where they decide to flee, and where if they're caught anywhere, and then there are extradition issues that I'm at no position to be able to predict right now. But we as human rights lawyers and as advocates, we have to do what we can, and what we can now is try to pursue these avenues, like the one that we, along with some victims, we're trying in Argentina.
Yeah, it's very admirable what you and your team are doing. Can you tell us a little bit about the victims who are part of this complaint and some of their stories that you want to share?
Sure. The three women that we've joined with, one is Kosar Eftekhari, who lost an eye during the protests. Again, another one is Mirza Shahinkar. She again lost an eye during the protests. And then there's Mahsa Pirai, whose mother was killed during the protests in Kermanshah. So we have these women that their stories it has been submitted, and their accounts has been submitted in this complaint. And in the future, if the case can proceed, then we'll have the opportunity to bring in more witnesses, so they can their accounts can be submitted as evidence in the proceedings.
And China, is there anything else that you'd like to add on this topic of the lawsuit that we haven't touched on that you really want to get out there?
What I would like to say, to your audience, anywhere in the world that they are, especially Iranians, is that documenting evidence and is really important. And in the midst of atrocities, in the midst of suppression, recording like dates and any single detail and collecting evidence, it can be helpful. So that's something that I always say in the course of my work, that gathering as much detail with accuracy will help in the long run. So that's something that I would like I always mention that to whenever I'm talking, that that's something that will help lawyers down the road.
And if anyone has any evidence they do want to submit, is there a way that they can get in touch with your organization that you could tell us about?
Yes, of course they can. They can message us. We're gonna hold a question and answer session in January, I believe. So in that session, we will
Online
provide,
or
uh,
in person?
probably we haven't figured that out yet, but we will hold a session
Great.
probably online, and we'll answer more questions to individuals who are interested.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much again. As someone who does investigations, I know what a daunting and difficult task that can be. So this is really an incredible breakthrough on your part. Thank you.
Sure.
That's
Thank you very
Shahin,
much, Nigartan. Thank you.
Shahin Milani joining us today on Eye for Iran.
Thank you.
YouTube is officially banned in Iran, but for millions of Iranians, it remains a vital connection to the outside world. Now, changes to how YouTube places ads are hitting Iranian content creators, and they're hitting them hard, cutting their income while ordinary viewers are seeing fewer ads. Joining me now to dig deeper into this topic is researcher and postdoctoral fellow Siavash Rokni. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Negarjan.
Wonderful. Siavash, YouTube may look like entertainment for most of us, but inside Iran, it's information, it's connection, it's visibility. It's highly important. So tell us what changed and about this YouTube update, and why does it matter so much for Iranian content creators?
Okay, so the story goes back to about a few weeks ago, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, where YouTube changed its algorithms. And basically, what YouTube tries to do is to like find customers for its advertisers. So the advertisers advertise on YouTube, and they're advertising to specific clients. So it's direct marketing. And YouTube changed its algorithms so that users who are using VPN, or who are in countries where they cannot, for example, purchase the products that YouTube is advertising, are demonetized, or they reduce the value of those users. Now, this is a very interesting and peculiar situation right now, because the mission of YouTube, and I read it for you, to give everyone a voice and show them the world. So this is kind of against the mission of YouTube, but from a financial perspective, from an economic perspective, it's a business decision. So that's one side. The other side, I'm gonna actually go back to 2009 and show you kind of a parallel of how the decisions of technology companies are not, like, they don't take into consideration people from Iran. In 2009, Twitter wanted to have a major upgrade, a major, maintenance. And exactly at that time, Iranians started using Twitter to report on 2009 Green Movement. And
which was one of the biggest challenges the Islamic Republic faced ever.
Exactly. And more interestingly, they did not even think of Twitter as a platform for citizen journalism. Until that point, they didn't even think of it as a platform for citizen journalism. So it just shows you how ignorant sometimes these decisions come. It's not because YouTube wants to be bad against Iranian YouTubers and content creators. It's just that they don't know. They have no clue that what this decision that they are making has extreme political implication and economic implications for Iran and for Iranians.
So put this into real terms for us. Like, how much would a very popular Iranian YouTuber be making before these changes, and how much would they be making now in terms of the shift?
I don't know the exact numbers of YouTube, what YouTubers make. Some of them make a lot of money. That's that I know. That
Something
they
can be
make
tens of
decent
thousands
money
per episode.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
huge.
yeah, yeah. It can be in that line. But what I do know is that they have lost between 80 to 90% of their revenue,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the users who are watching their videos, some of them are outside of Iran, so those users are monetized, but the users that are connecting from Iran are not monetized. And this is the other challenge over here, which is that YouTube uses the term everyone, but the everyone is not everyone. Everyone is everyone who will profit YouTube. It's not everyone. This idea of everyone, you need to put it out of our heads, kind of. And the thing is that the viewership on YouTube is not declining. From Iran, it's actually increasing. So it's
Yeah.
actually a market. But for them, that market does not have any value. And why? Because the Islamic Republic is, sick in the head to just give hardship to people instead of, actually providing its people, uh, with ways of creating content and moving the culture forward, because of sanctions. The sanctions are there. The Iranians cannot access websites like Amazon, like all the websites that we use to purchase products here. They cannot have a credit card, like they have their own credit card system in Iran, but it's different. They don't have these very basic things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
So what happens is that the content creators have found a way to disconnect themselves economically from the system, and an economic decision from a company that wants to treat everyone does not treat everyone
Fairly,
equally.
allegedly. And we talked about this in a previous episode that we had on with you about rap music, and you talked about do it yourself, a parallel economy, and finding other
Mhm.
ways to monetize and be financially independent, where you wouldn't have to rely on the Islamic Republic state and follow their rules and their censorship and what they put before you. So what does
Mhm.
this do to that market that you talked about, this parallel economy?
It destroys a lot of it and it changes a lot of it. Some of the users are going to shift to other platforms such as Kick.com. Now, the thing with Kick is that Kick is a streaming platform. A YouTube content creator is not a streamer. Those are two different things.
Yeah, very different things.
The techniques they use are different. The way they interact with audience is different. A mainstreamer interacts directly with his audience. A YouTube content creator is actually creating a
There's
content
production, there's
with
production value
structure, with
to it. Yeah.
production, etc., etc. So those are two different things. So some of that will be shifted there. Some of the YouTubers may have to stop producing for now until they figure out another way of going around things, which is problematic. Um, and um, and there may be new things coming out because this is culture. Culture is very fluid and it changes constantly. So you never know how creative a population is, and how much that creativity will bring a new form of even content creation. So that might be another thing going around it. What I do want to add though is that I have a feeling that us in the Iranian diaspora have a responsibility now to kind of help these guys. If we have a program that we watch and we support, okay, give them some donation. Like $10, $15 is not a lot for us, but for them it will
It's
go a
huge.
long way, sort of. So that's that sort of thing. And maybe even think of finding like a way to get a few more uh, rich Iranians to get together and make a foundation and actually sponsor these guys,
Oh,
because
that's a good idea.
they don't need a lot of money. They just need some. and they'll figure it out. I mean, the beauty of if you look at the diversity of content creation on YouTube by Iranians, you'll be very, very amazed.
It's
And
amazing.
there's always this silly argument that all these content creators are like they make bad content.
Oh,
Bad
tell us
content
about
is
it.
good.
Tell us
Huh?
about kind of the diversity of content that you do see from Iranian creators inside Iran.
I mean, from so many things, whatever you want to think about, from like doing yoga to understanding philosophy to like knowing the latest trends in like with cars to I don't know, like there's so many things, like the community is a very creative community, you know. I want to point to this though. Okay, there's an argument that a lot of people make, and I saw that some of that on X on Twitter, that it's good that all these bad content creators are gonna go away. No, bad content creation has to happen for good content creation to come out of it. There, I talked with a friend of mine about music, and they always say, like, okay, but we need good music, and I'm like, where does good music come from? From bad music. It comes from bad music, from doing bad things, and say, okay, this was bad, maybe better, from having feedback. If we don't have feedback, we have this idea that we need to be presenting ourselves perfectly from the first episode, first thing. No, we don't need to. We need to have bad content, and that is good. We just need to have a lot of it. And we had a lot of it, and we are losing a lot of it. So we need to fight for that, and we need to help these content creators somehow. I don't know how. That was one proposition that I gave. It's a complicated proposition, but it is a proposition. But there has to be a way to have to support our fellow Iranians inside Iran to continue disconnecting themselves from the IRGC economy and creating their parallel economy.
Can you talk more about that, about the impact this is having in terms of not being able to disconnect? And not only that, the content that they produce obviously is not state sanctioned. And that's also very important. Like, how does this kind of social movement have political and economic consequences in real life inside Iran?
Okay, we talked about Zia's program last week.
A streamer, for those who didn't, may have not watched the episode
exactly.
or don't remember.
So we talked about Zia's program, and we talked about Gang, and then you saw that Gang came out finally, and Shaya was right in the...
Just tell us again what that is for people who may have missed the episode.
Yeah, so Gang is a program about rap in Iran, and Zia selectively chose 12 rappers to showcase them in this program.
And he's a streamer host who's living in Turkey but still connected to the apparatus, state apparatus in Iran.
Yes, and also he produced a program for Filimo, which is directly regulated by SATRA, which is IRIB basically. So it's directly regulated by IRIB, Iranian Broadcasting Network. Yeah. So Gang came out, 2 weeks ago, and you saw what happened with Gang. If we don't allow content creators to have freedom, their content and their message is going to be diluted, is going to be appropriated by the system, and it will be used in the benefits of the system to engineer the Iranian culture. This is way more problematic than you think it is. We talk about wars, we talk about I don't know, the politics, the geopolitics. We know for a fact, since the Islamic Revolution, the thing that has constantly been a slow revolution in this country has been minute cultural practices that has pushed the government to change constantly. Okay, minute cultural movements that are persistent that has changed the system. Okay, now if the YouTubers, okay, now are a lot of them are going to be, stopping, what are they gonna do? They either going to stop completely, find another source of revenue, or the Iranian government will gonna see this as an advantage and create its own system to take all of these guys and actually like create its own package of 10 or 15 of them that are, it's sanctioned by the government, but kind of more hidden, the way that Zia did the thing. But the good thing with the Iranian population is that they're intelligent. They called Zia out. The rappers destroyed Zia, destroyed Shaya, and good for them. They need to be destroyed. Those two, they need to be destroyed because they deserve it. They lied to people, and the rappers called them out. Okay, but going back to this, we need to be careful because the Iranian government, it's very good at appropriating culture. They have systems, they have plans. It's not like they are oblivion to this. They're actually way smarter than we think they are. Okay, and we need to be very proactive about it. We need to understand understand the importance of this, even if it's banal cultural practices. There is no banal cultural practices. Cultural practices that are independent from the system are good. At the long term, they are good for the country.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant point, and YouTube's decision over here in North America is having huge political, social, and economic consequences for the people of Iran. Is there anything you'd like to add, Siavash?
Cheers to all the YouTubers. I'm drinking tea, but still, cheers.
Cheers to all the YouTubers, and wishing them all the best as they find some sort of a solution and hopefully some help from the diaspora. Thank you so much again. That's Siavash Rokni joining us on Eye for Iran.
Thank you, Nagarjan. Have a good day.
You can sign up for our weekly briefing newsletter at iranintl.com/newsletter. The Eye for Iran podcast series is brought to you by Iran International, your go-to destination for expert Iranian news in both Farsi and English. For more, you can head to our dedicated English website at iranintl.com/en.